I'm Eric Bana. I'm a program manager on the Hyper-V team.
Cool. So you're working on Windows Server 8, and I saw a demo recently for IT pros about PowerShell stuff in Hyper-V. Can you tell us, before we see the demo here, kind of what's going to be in the demo and who should watch it?
Okay, so the demo is of some of the Hyper-V PowerShell commandlets in Windows Server 8. The people who would watch it are those that are managing Hyper-V or like to learn a little bit about how to manage Hyper-V. And it is helpful if you've seen PowerShell somewhere before, whether it's in person or in some other video.
Cool. All right. Can you show us the demo?
Let's do it.
Great. Now, what are you going to show us in part 3?
Well, another important aspect of managing servers especially is doing remote management. You might not always physically be at the server, may not even be in the same building. So we built the commandlets so that you can do remote management the same way you do local management.
I don't have to remote into the machine first?
You do not. Nope. And I'll show you that. You don't have to remote desktop in.
Right.
You don't even have to create a remote PowerShell session. So I'll show you here. I'm just going to store the name of this remote server into a variable, just so I don't have to type it again and again. Now suppose you want to create a new VM on a server somewhere, a remote server. New VM dash question mark, that'll give you the help content. And what you'll see here is that we have a computer name parameter, and this tells us which Hyper-V server to run this command on. So if you wanted to create a new VM called remote on this remote server, it's new VM remote computer name remote server. And that's going to create it now on that remote machine. So you can see it here. Notice it's not showing up in Hyper-V Manager because this is the local server we're showing. Alright, so suppose now you've got this VM. You want to change the memory configuration. Okay, set VM memory. Set is the standard PowerShell verb for just modifying things. And you can see here again, we have the computer name parameter. So if you can do it locally, we want to enable you also to be able to do it remotely. And so in this case, we'll set the VM memory of that remote VM on the remote server computer. And the settings will change here, just enable dynamic memory and set the minimum memory. And you can see here we use MB.
And again, like in the first couple of these episodes, you used the pass-through to return the object, right?
Yep, just want to show the result of what we're doing. Exactly.
Just like a visual confirmation of what happened.
Yep. That way you know exactly which objects have been modified and what they've been modified to.
If you entered the wrong name there or something, you go, oh! And you can go back and fix it.
Yep. And in fact, we have the same option for remove commandlets. So if you are removing a bunch of things, now you know exactly what you removed.
Right.
So if you remove the wrong one, oh, okay, got to go rebuild that.
Right.
Now one of those operations that involves multiple servers is live migration. This is a feature that we had in R2 if you had Virtual Machine Manager from System Center. Now it's also going to be available in the box without any shared storage. So just 2 standalone servers, you can move VMs, no downtime. I'll show you that.
First, now, is this available in Hyper-V Server as well, the free version?
Yes.
Cool.
It is indeed. So, and these commandlets are also there. So the first thing to check is whether virtual machine migration is enabled on these 2 servers. By default it's not, for security reasons. Okay, so now you're thinking, how can we enable VM migration? Well, that's exactly the name of the commandlet. Enable VM migration. You give us the computers. And
so I don't have to remote into the remote server to allow it to have live migrations. I can just do it from here.
That's right.
Cool.
Yep. Now you see we throw 2 warning messages here. The reason
you're opening up that machine and you want to be aware that you're doing that.
It's not only that we're opening that up, but you have to choose which migration network you want to migrate over. You could have multiple NICs. In fact, the best practice is to have multiple NICs. So you want to choose which ones to migrate. For the purposes of just this demo, I'll use any network for migration. So we'll set that. Notice here, we're setting this on 2 machines just by giving machine name 1, comma machine name 2. Alright, so now let's create this VM that we're going to move. You can see it came up here in Hyper-V Manager. Alright, so that VM is running. And then the question is, how do you move or migrate a VM? Well, let's just call it get command. and see what all you can do with a VM. Okay, here we go. And
There's not one called migrate.
there's no migrate, but there's a move.
Ah, probably similar.
So let's see. If we're going to move VM, we're just going to give the name of that virtual machine and the destination. Now, what you're seeing here is an error because the first server I'm on,
Right.
the processor has certain features that are not compatible on the second one.
So you have a CPU mismatch between the host and the destination.
Yep, exactly. Now we have a
Now
setting.
that might affect if you bring up my VM on the destination and it relied on a CPU feature that's not present, then it might not work correctly.
We wouldn't want that to happen. So the whole goal is move it, keep it running.
Right.
All right. So what I'm going to do is stop the VM, enable this compatibility, and then we're going to start the VM again. And because of the pass-through parameter, we can do this all in one line.
Yep.
So what you'll see here in Hyper-V Manager, that VM is going to go offline momentarily
Yep.
and come back up. All right, so now we've reconfigured it.
Yep. So now it can be moved without any problem.
Yep, indeed. So we're going to move that VM. You see the progress bar, so you know this one's going to go pretty quick. We're already at 59%. Okay,
That's handy. Let me know the progress there.
and you see the VM's gone from Hyper-V Manager. As you'd expect, we see the same thing in PowerShell. We look for this VM. It's no longer present on the local server, but it is present on the remote one, and it's still running.
Cool. Now, this has all been sort of Hyper-V specific. How much of it applies to other places or other things I might have to do in my Windows environment?
Well, one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from customers is that those customers that manage Hyper-V often are managing other things too.
Right.
And storage and networking are the two big ones.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you some examples here of how...
And security. Right?
Yes.
That's common across all of it too.
So I'm going to show you some examples of how we interoperate, in particular with storage and networking, to do some common tasks. So one of the questions that we get is, if I mount a VHD, how do I know what drive letters just got mounted? Well, let's think about this just about the physical Windows world. How would you do this? Thanks to some of the work from the storage team in Windows 8, you can call get disk and pipe that to get partition. So this nothing to do with Hyper-V so far, it's just Windows in general. All right, well, once you know that, once you know how to do this in the physical Windows world, if you mount a VHD, you give the pass-through parameter so you get an object back, just pipe it to the same ones. Get disk, get partition. Now what you'll see, the two volumes, in this case the drive letters are E and F of the mounted VHD. Whole point being, if you know how to do it in Windows, you know how to do it in Hyper-V. And we'll dismount that disk. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why we have standard verbs. So mount, dismount, so you can pair things up more easily.
Enable, disable.
Yep. Start, stop. All right, networking. So VMs, very common that you want them to have internet access. So you have a bunch of web servers as VMs. How do you create that external switch and bind it to a physical NIC so you have internet access? Well, again, suppose you're new to the commandlets and you know you want to create some new VM something switch. Exactly. That's the commandlet, new VM switch. All right, how do you specify then a physical network adapter? Let's step aside from Hyper-V. How would you do this in Windows in general? Thanks to the networking team, there's a commandlet called getNetAdapter that will list all the physical network adapters you have. All right, suppose we want to now create a virtual switch bound to the KM-test loopback adapter. Just specify the interface description. You saw it up here. Here it is. Parameters and property names match. Great, there's our physical NIC. And you just pipe that to new VM switch. So if you know how to get it in the physical Windows world, you know how to do this in the Hyper-V way.
Cool. Well, Eric, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.